Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This afternoon, I stepped down as leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Ousted as leader of the federal Conservatives, how the party moves forward. Also, new numbers painting a grim picture for anyone trying to get into the Lower Mainland's real estate market.
I was absolutely amazed.
An engineering feat, an inside look at how crews repaired the Coquihalla in record time.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Erin O'Toole has been ousted as leader of the federal Conservatives. He's been removed in a secret vote by the majority of MPs within his party. And as Hannah Thibodeau reports, the question now is how the party moves forward.
This afternoon, I stepped down as leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition and leader of the Conservative Party of Canada following a Reform Act vote in our caucus.
Months after losing the election, Conservative MPs chose to oust their leader. 62% of the caucus said Erin O'Toole should be replaced.
I pledge my support and unwavering loyalty to our next leader, and I urge everyone in our party to come together and do the same.
A number of caucus members who felt that in order to pull this disparate bunch together, we needed to start fresh, and that Erin wasn't going to be able to do it.
This is not a good day for our movement. This is not a good day for Erin.
O'Toole is a four-term Ontario MP who led the party into the 2021 election. He faced mounting criticism about shifting positions on the carbon tax, balanced budgets, and assault-style firearms in the campaign. Some Conservatives were also frustrated that O'Toole ran in the leadership race as a true blue Tory, but then moved to the centre when he won the job. Today in Parliament, appreciation from both sides of the aisle.
There is a lot we don't agree on for the direction of this country, but he stepped up to serve his country, and I want to thank him for his sacrifice.
I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the work and the sacrifice of the member from Durham.
The priority now for Conservatives, uniting to move on.
I'm looking forward to this fresh start that we now have. We're entering a new era for the Conservative Party.
I think it's time for our party to get reunited and get back on the same page here, and I think you're going to see that.
But some see that as easier said than done.
It's going to be a bloody tough job. Bloody tough job.
Our party could sort of splinter into 1,000 pieces if you're not careful. And I think the caucus is mindful of that. And they're obviously doing a good job of trying to put that stiff upper lip and that gritted teeth determination on to get today.
So with O'Toole's resignation official, the Conservative Party will now launch a leadership race soon. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
And just breaking now, BC sources have confirmed that an MP from Manitoba, Candice Bergen, has been elected by the CPC caucus as the interim party leader. And earlier today, federal Conservative Party MPs from BC gave their thoughts on the O'Toole news. They say now is the time to find a new permanent leader who will unite the party.
I don't think there's any desire in the party for a drawn-out process. And personally, I would say that this is something that we should take care of, I would hope, before the fall, but that decision will now be made by, there'll be a leadership a LEOC that will be launched. The National Council will have something to say about that. So, but I think, given the minority nature of the Parliament, we want to get that face in front of Canadians as soon as possible, the permanent leader. So that's what I'll be advocating for.
For me, the most important thing is to find a leader who will unite our party. We will always have differences of opinion within our party. That's healthy. It's healthy in a democracy. But I want to make sure that we choose a leader that leads with strength, with character, and a clear vision for where our country needs to go. And it should not be a vision of division of Canadians the way we see from Justin Trudeau. We need a unifier to lead our party.
Okay, I want to turn to Surrey now, where a family is shaken up after police say someone shot into their home by mistake. Officers believe the shooters may have been going after someone connected to the previous owner. Dan Burrett joins us live with more on this. Dan, just a terrifying situation, and we spoke with the family today.
Yes, they invited us inside. Sukhjit Garacha thought it was fireworks that woke him up. Not so.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one from outside 6, 7, 8.
Bullets tore into his house just before 3 a.m. yesterday morning on Tulsi Crescent, close to 88th and King George Boulevard in Newton. They hit windows, they hit cars, even a scooter in his garage. Thankfully, they didn't hit any bedrooms. Garacha lives there with his wife, 3 young daughters, and his parents. Surrey RCMP say they don't believe Garacha and his family were the intended targets. Instead, officers suggest evidence shows someone linked to the previous owners may have been who the shooters were after. All of that far too close to home for Garacha.
On that couch, my grandmother that night sleeping there. Yeah. The shooter in the driveway. If he hit that window, and she gonna kill my grandmother. It's really scary. Only 4 feet difference.
Garacha says police took surveillance video from the cameras in his home to try to find those responsible. Police believe the attack is targeted but not linked to gangs. Mounties said they have offered support to Garacha and his family, and interestingly say they have discussed a safety plan with the intended target. They don't say who that is. Anita.
Wow, okay. Dan Burrett, live for us tonight. Thank you. Well, swimming lessons are a rite of passage for many kids, but in Surrey, several public pools have been shut down because of the pandemic. So for parents trying to find a spot, it's now even more challenging. And as Surrey Bureau reporter Kiran Singh tells us, it may stay that way for a while.
And it does make me feel a bit like as a failure as a parent that I can't provide my kid with what should be a fairly simple thing to do, like swimming lesson.
Courtney So has 2 young boys. She says for the past 2 years, she's been unable to get her 5-year-old into swimming classes.
You find the class that you want and you're like, oh, it says waitlist already. Like, it's 9:01, okay. Everything was just like gone before I knew what had happened. And there I was sitting there just in tears.
Courtney's experience is not unique. Megha Anand tried to get her 7-year-old into swimming without any luck.
So she's already completed level 1. I think she completed level 1 when she was around 5 years old. But when we tried to get her in level 2, we couldn't get the right spot. So she had to actually repeat level 1 again. And the next year we tried again when she was 6, and we still couldn't get a spot.
The city of Surrey admits there has been a significant drop in the number of lesson spots available since the pandemic started. In 2019, before the pandemic, the city had 51,344 registrants in swim lessons. In 2021, due to the ongoing pandemic, there were decreased capacity and limited staffing. The city saw 3,278 registrants. That's a 93% drop in the number of lessons for Surrey kids. But Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum is dismissing the issue.
Well, I don't know who you're talking to. My grandkids are in all sorts of swimming events, and all I've heard is how good our swimming pools are.
But Courtney says that's not good enough, and more should be done to try to restore recreation access to pre-pandemic levels sooner.
I fully appreciate that there's a pandemic going on, that I'm not expecting miracles from the city of Surrey. But it really doesn't feel like from sitting over here, like the city is doing everything that they can right now to give us all the services that are possible.
Of the city's 5 indoor pools, only 3 are operational right now. City officials say they hope to open a 4th one in March. Kiran Singh, CBC News, Surrey.
Green spaces in cities across the country are shrinking, according to a new look from Stats Canada. The agency used satellite imagery to estimate how many parks, trees, backyards, and lawns existed in urban centers. They found about 3/4 of large and medium-sized cities were less green in 2019 than 20 years earlier. One of the biggest losers was Kelowna. It went from nearly 3/4 green to less than half. Researchers say it was largely because of urbanization. Kelowna's population grew from around 150,000 to more than 220,000 over the 20-year period. Well, the rate of first doses given to British Columbians aged 5 and older has now hit 90%. But today's COVID-19 fatalities have doubled yesterday's number. 18 more British Columbians have died from the virus. With 47 fewer patients, BC's hospitalizations have now gone below 1,000 again. 136 people are in critical care. No healthcare facility outbreaks have been added today. It now costs an average of $2.4 million to buy a single detached home in Greater Vancouver, and the new real estate numbers out today for the region paint a grim picture for anyone trying to get into the market. Justin McElroy has been following this story for us today. And Justin, what does the data tell you?
Yeah, it's a good story if you've been in the market a while, but as you said, Anita, for people looking to get in, it goes up and up and up. And I know we talk a lot about how high real estate prices are in this city, but take a look at this chart showing just from the last month, the average selling price for a detached home now at $2.3 billion. That's an all-time high for the region. And you can see that huge spike just in the last couple of years after a few years of the market being pretty moderate. And if you think, well, a detached home in Greater Vancouver, not everyone could afford that at the worst of times anyways, they need to go further out. Take a look at this chart. It shows the difference in the average selling price for a condo in January 2020 versus January 2022. And you look Greater Vancouver, it's up by 140,000 or so, but it's up by 160,000 or so in the Fraser Valley and up by 190,000 in Greater Victoria over that time period. So it's getting more and more expensive no matter where you are in Southwest BC, and it's been going up by huge amounts just over the last 6 months, more so than a lot of experts predicted.
No kidding, pretty shocking numbers for sure. So is there any indication that the government is planning to do anything to help bring down the cost of housing?
Well, it's a question we ask them every time these new numbers come up, and generally the province says a few things. They say that a lot of this is due to the previous government's fault. They say that they're looking at putting in new measures. They say that it's complicated because it involves federal interest rates, monetary policy, a whole host of measures. But we did ask the Attorney General and Minister responsible for housing, David Eby, whether they were planning on putting in any new taxes or any new demand-side measures to the housing market a couple weeks ago, and here's what he had to say.
Increasing taxes on people across the province. I mean, keeping in mind that the majority of British Columbians are, in fact, homeowners. 64% of people in Vancouver are homeowners still in the most expensive market. And so you're talking about a broad-based middle-class tax increase at a time when costs are going up all across the board for British Columbians. We're not going to do it.
So he has hinted, and the government has hinted about new measures maybe coming in place to incentivize building more housing. But in terms of measures to reduce demand in British Columbia, not something that it looks like the province is considering, as you heard from him, anytime soon.
Justin McElroy, thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
The BC Liberals are on the verge of electing the party's new leader, but the race hasn't attracted widespread excitement. With 7 candidates in the running, the decision comes down to this Saturday. Our provincial affairs reporter Mira Baines looks at what might happen as the party seeks to renew itself.
The BC Liberal leadership race has been focusing on charting a new path for the party. It's been on a losing streak, defeated in 2 elections in a row after 16 years in power. But will the party's membership rest its hopes on a fresh face, like Gavin Dew or Val Litwin or MLA Renee Merrifield, or someone with more experience, such as MLA Ellis Ross, who is also Indigenous from northern BC, or Vancouver MLA Michael Lee, or a candidate steeped in BC Liberal political history, like former Cabinet Minister Kevin Falcon, or an outsider like Victoria developer Stan Sipos. However, the race has gained little traction and attention, partly due to the pandemic.
There has been absolutely no buzz at all about this leadership race, and maybe a case where the Liberals choose a new leader and nobody notices. And that's a real missed opportunity.
It could come down to a numbers game. More than 40,000 members are set to vote, although there have been accusations over new sign-ups. Even so, leadership contests are difficult to predict due to the balloting system used. During the last BC Liberal Leadership Convention, Andrew Wilkinson became leader, coming in third on the first ballot, to slowly move up over later rounds, gaining support after other candidates dropped off, and winning in the final fifth round. On convention night, political watchers say former Liberal cabinet minister Kevin Falcon, who is being talked about as a frontrunner, is the one to watch on the first ballot.
I would suggest that if he doesn't win on the first ballot or is not very close to winning on the first ballot, say he's under 40%, then I think it really opens up. And we could get a surprise here.
This former Surrey City Councillor and Liberal says the party needs to tackle issues affecting everyday life, such as housing affordability and health care. It's where NDP leader John Horgan resonated with voters.
Have leadership that not only gives hope, but actual plans on how to have emergency plans in place and how we're going to deal with the climate and the issue of diversity around not only women, people of color, but socioeconomic diversity too. And I think forward is the key word in this campaign.
A tough job ahead. The new Liberal leader will have to win back urban voters where the party lost seats in the Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver, which were once solid red. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
So what will it take to revitalize the BC Liberals? Well, coming up, we talked to political commentator Barinder Buller about what it will take, and that's happening in about 20 minutes. Well, as Surrey's transition to a municipal police force continues to move forward, the community will see a significant increase in the number of officers on the road this year. The plan is to bring in 175 new recruits. That's in addition to the 50 hired last year. The total doesn't include civilian employees or support staff. As the first phase of the transition goes forward, the officers will be deployed to Surrey RCMP. The service says the public should expect to see members wearing both RCMP uniforms and Surrey Police Service uniforms. Well, it's been called a heroic effort, the efforts to rebuild the Coquihalla Highway after November's atmospheric river caused extensive damage. There were washed out bridges and entire sections reduced to rubble. But crews were able to safely reopen the highway after 35 days of nonstop work. Our Benit Brach and Gianpaolo Mendoza are looking at how engineers repaired one of BC's busiest routes so quickly.
From Hope to Kamloops, the Coquihalla Highway is one of the most important roads in southern BC, a vital link in the province's supply chain connecting commercial traffic from the lower mainland to the rest of the country.
Coquihalla was really built as the commercial trucking route with good highways, nice grades, nice and wide, safe to operate, and can accommodate a large volume of commercial traffic along it.
But that steady flow of goods came to a sharp stop last year. Flooding from an atmospheric river damaged more than 20 sections of the highway. Some parts of the road completely disappeared.
The scope and scale of the damage was really staggering, and it wasn't just the road, but the adjacent infrastructure. So the pipelines, the power lines, secondary roads.
Hewitt was one of the dozens of companies that the BC government called in days after the disaster. The engineering firm took the lead on designing highway repairs, and along with other contractors, its staff were some of the first to see the scale of the damage up close.
I was absolutely amazed at the power of the water and how fast it would find a new route.
The government called the repair efforts one of the most remarkable engineering feats in BC. As many as 300 people worked day and night on the Coquihalla for 35 days to make it safe to drive again, and this is how they did it. The first obstacle was getting repair crews and equipment in safely. The Coquihalla has multiple bridges that cross several major rivers, and with many of them destroyed, engineers had to prioritize those sites. Engineers say two of the major sites were the Jessica Bridge and the Bottle Top Bridge.
Those were difficult for two reasons. One, the spans of the bridges had to be replaced to get them reopened, but secondly, because that was now your constraint for how you could get equipment and have a reliable access to get equipment to fix the remainder of the areas that were between those 2 points.
Using helicopters and drones to survey the damage, they were able to pinpoint the hardest hit areas and gather key geotechnical data. Then they figured out where to start.
We would send drones that had LiDAR capability or photogrammetry. It'll essentially shoot lasers out through an imaging process and then the reflection of what comes back from the ground is gathered in the device, in the scanner, and then it records all those, millions and millions of data points that it collects through the lasers. And then that information can quickly be transferred to a design team that's sitting off site to then use it and develop plans and drawings for any remediation work that has to be performed.
Once the designs were finalized, the heavy machinery was rolled in. Hundreds of workers repaired erosion and rebuilt what the water had torn down. The fixes work for now, but won't last permanently. So what do engineers think needs to be built for the highways to withstand another catastrophe?
When we look at stream flows, we look at models that try and predict potential future flows under different climate scenarios. So that might mean that instead of sizing a culvert the way we did in 1985 when the highway opened, we'll size it to a much bigger size. We need to agree together what we want to do, how we can adapt that infrastructure to be more resilient, and how much as a community we're willing to invest to manage that risk in the future.
As long-term repairs continue along the highway, 2021's floods serve as a reminder that no matter how important the Coquihalla Highway is to BC, it belonged to nature first. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. And okay, this is kind of a weird thing, but I felt like the snow was a little bit weird today, Joe. There were sort of odd patches of accumulation in my backyard and on the street. I don't know if that makes sense, but I wish I had a picture.
It does make sense. And I think many of us can relate to what you're saying. And that's because it didn't all fall as snow through the day. It was highly variable. So it really depended on what surface we're talking about. It stuck on the grass for some areas, melted immediately on contact for sidewalks. Cars got it a bit. All in all, a skiff of snow for Metro Vancouver was the story today, a patchy skiff. Let me show you what the radar looks like right now. We still have some snow out there, but yes, highly variable thanks to an easterly flow. The outflow winds continue to bring dry air from the valley. I think we've got the radar here to show you that really it is just east of Chilliwack getting the steadier snow right now. I'm still looking at the risk of some wet snow mixed in with rain tonight. In fact, here in the North Shore, we're seeing that wet snow fall right now. A bigger picture, we've got a fresh surge of moisture moving in across the province, but milder air is also advecting into Metro Vancouver. So we're warming up overnight, not expected to see any more major accumulations, although a special weather statement still in place through the evening. But that fresh round of snow going to be bringing big accumulations to much of BC. Terrace, Kitimat over towards Prince George, the Peace, and then down towards the highway passes Anita. Big snow tonight, so I'll time that out and take you through a much warmer forecast coming up.
Sounds good. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Sophia Financial Group of Raymond James Limited. Register now for our free Cash Flow Connection series at sophiaevents.ca.
While Lunar New Year is most associated with the Chinese community, cultures from other parts of Asia have their own unique ways of celebrating it as well. Arlene Young caught up with two people of Korean and Vietnamese heritage to explore what the time means to them.
Hey everyone, my name is Hui. I was born in Vietnam, but I do have a Chinese background.
Hey, my name is Taeyang. My family immigrated here in 1994, and I've been more or less living in North America for all my life.
And I'm Leanne. I'm with CBC, and I'm a first-generation Chinese Canadian. What's your must-do every year for Lunar New Year? Hui, you want to start?
The must-do during every Lunar New Year is to go out to the adults and ask for the red envelope. You know, as a kid, as a child, we were very excited, you know, every time that it comes to Lunar New Year, because we know we're gonna get that red envelope that has, you know, luck and money in it. Mostly luck, but, you know, money as well.
Yeah, I don't think the red envelope, but definitely the money as well as the luck. Like, we have this whole celebration where we bow to our elders and then they give cash and then pass on good words of fortune.
Are there traditional colors for each of your cultures that you tend to wear around this time of year?
In Vietnam, we like to wear our traditional outfit, which is the áo dài. And in terms of colors, I don't know. We go with yellow, we go with red, anything that resembles money. so we go with that.
I see a lot of similarities.
Yeah. We would traditionally wear hanbok, which is like very bright clothing made of similar materials, I think, too. And in terms of colors, like really anything bright, like bright inspires like hope, like a new future, but now it's kind of a bit more casual. Like I would probably wear this if anything.
Final question, what's one thing that you would each want everyone to know about Lunar New Year in your culture?
We celebrate a lot, through food and through, meeting our relatives, friends, and family. Wishes everybody like a happy new year, and then we spend time together.
If there was one thing that really does mark the passing of a new year, it would be this dish called tteokguk. By eating it, it means that you were technically 1 year older. There's a lot of symbolism from how the white of the rice cake means purity and clarity. The mandu that my mom adds means like good wealth and fortune. Pretty much like the core root of what this kind of day means for me.
The reason why food is so important in the Chinese culture around the Lunar New Year is everything's done family style because we're there to share in that spirit, right? That spirit of goodwill, that spirit of hopefully prosperity and good health and just good things for the year to come. So thank you to the both of you for sharing a bit of your traditions and your family's history with us. Really appreciate it. Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. Well, winter usually means raining cats and dogs. Well, how about deplaning cats and dogs? Hundreds of them. Scores of pets stranded in Afghanistan landed at YVR last night, ready for homes in Canada. 158 dogs and 146 cats touched down in Vancouver after stops in Turkey and Iceland. The critters were left behind when U.S. forces withdrew from Afghanistan. The plane load of pets is the result of more than 6 months of rescue efforts by the SPCA. Now, some of the animals will be reunited with their owners. Others will be put up for adoption.
Here she is. She's going home in this tomorrow, back to the States. She's never been to the States. She's always been in Afghanistan. I'm bringing Tay-Tay home, so yes, it's elating.
Anyone looking to adopt one of the pets can visit the SPCA International website. Local applications will be handled by the BC-based Rain Coast Dog Rescue Society. Under threats of arrest, the border blockers in Alberta move, albeit begrudgingly. Why they opened up a lane, next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Well, luge is just one of the sports we'll be watching for in Beijing, but a family in Stratford, Prince Edward Island is trying the sport out in their own backyard. It invited some neighborhood kids to try out the wintry ride. Here's what they thought.
Welcome to the luge. When I'm going down, I feel like a roller coaster of some sort, and basically feels like you're on a water slide. I like that there's a lot of turns. I like when I go crashing into walls, and I like when it goes super fast and I die. One more time.
We're in our backyard where we built a luge.
With lots of shovels and heart and sweat and a snowblower. We made our luge happen, and the kids come over and really enjoy it, and we enjoy it. Yeah.
It's really fun and just something to do, because if this wasn't here, we'd basically just be on our phones all day and doing school.
School is really stressful, and it's just nice to get your mind off school. And once you're done, you have something to look forward to. Just get in your snow stuff and just go sledding.
Yeah.
It has been huge, just something for our kids to look forward to. They're at home doing schoolwork, and to be able to be outside with their neighbors and friends, and they're just loving it. It's been amazing.
The luge kind of formed itself based on every time anyone went down it. So it kind of changed its shape over time. And then, because the sun's going down so early in the winter, we're like, let's put up lights. So I think pretty soon it's going to be like an entire amusement park back here eventually.
When it's dark out there, our moms are going to call us in for bedtime, and we're going to be like, one more time. But then we end up going 10 more.
They were here one time for 12 hours. that's a lot of time to spend outdoors and having fun. So that's a good life lesson.
Being able to come over here and on the luge every day and knowing that their neighbors made it for them, I think they'll never forget it. That makes my heart warm to know that they're enjoying it just as much as we are.
And knowing how hard they worked for it makes it a lot better.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to know that when all the snow melts, this thing will be gone.
There appears to be some movement at the protest blockade that closed an important border crossing in Alberta. A group of truckers demanding an end to vaccine mandates and other COVID restrictions set up a blockade over the weekend. But as Julia Wong tells us, protesters have since conceded some ground.
Truckers near the Coots border crossing in southern Alberta moved towards their vehicles. Some protesters in this blockade say they're opening one lane of traffic on each side. An act of good faith, some of their demands to ease public health measures will be met by the provincial government. Alberta's United Conservative Caucus says no agreement has been made with the protesters. Meanwhile, one trucker who declined to give his name explains why he supports the demonstration.
We've lost enough freedoms over the years as it is, and all they keep doing is inch by inch. They take 3 or 4 things, and a few months later they give 1 or 2 back.
The protest has been disrupting traffic and trade for days. It's linked to a larger protest over vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers and other grievances about the handling of the pandemic. Wednesday morning, Coots Mayor Jim Willett described his roughly 250-person village as being boxed in.
Everything that we need is 20 kilometers up the road through the war zone in Milk River. Groceries, pharmacy, medical is all out of reach.
Resident Kevin White says he's aligned with the protesters' cause, but feels under siege where he lives.
The blocking of the highway, not so good. I don't understand why they have to do that.
The Canada Border Services Agency is expanding hours at 2 other crossings in Alberta, a move to relieve some of the backlog at the border. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
And calls are getting louder for officials to end the anti-vaccine and mandate protest in Ottawa. Organizers say they will stay until their demands are met, and police have vowed to step up their response.
We are escalating our actions, including enforcement. We're going to do so without unnecessarily escalating greater public safety risks. We do not want riots. We can never accept serious injuries or deaths. But all options remain on the table.
Police say only a few hundred protesters remain on Parliament Hill. It's estimated there were about 18,000 demonstrators over the weekend. A third person has been arrested and charged for making threats. Well, suffering from a collapse of the urban and suburban vote last election, the BC Liberals are set to elect a new leader. Who might help the party revive its political fortunes? We speak to an insider next.
The pictures are certainly dramatic. Video shot by the RCMP-led Special Olympic Unit, the ISU. The very name sounds like it's part of a spy thriller. But this is the reality of the Integrated Security Unit, an office building in a suburban industrial park. It almost looks boring. And why not? There appears to be no reason for alarm.
Canada today sits at a threat level which we refer to as low. There is no known threat to the Olympic or the Paralympic Games.
Still, here at ICU headquarters, they are preparing for what they call a presumptive medium threat level. And so behind these walls, where unfortunately we weren't allowed to take our cameras, we saw people getting ready for everything from an air attack to a catastrophic earthquake. There are dozens of senior officers with a dazzling array of technology. North American air defense officials are watching the skies. Every police radio call in the province is being monitored for Olympic implications.
He'll investigate that and let you know what's going to happen.
And local police are watching Vancouver streets like never before. There are hundreds of new cameras which may make criminals nervous, but also perhaps intimidate people who want to, for example, protest the Olympics.
And these kinds of not illegal activities, but activities that may be frowned on by one group or the other, might be affected by surveillance cameras. And so we need to ask, how much of that are we willing to give up in return for security?
By the time the games begin, there will be 6,000 additional police officers on duty in Vancouver and Whistler. But their commander vows the games will not become an armed camp.
And I would expect that the feedback that I'll get is that it was friendly, it was appropriate, and it was helpful, instead of being the story of the Olympics.
Mercer is interested in whether all the security will bring down Vancouver's crime rate for a couple of weeks. He's heard lots of anecdotes, but for the first time, criminologists will be tracking the data to see if there is indeed an Olympic effect.
Helicopter dropped the 10 skiers on top of this unnamed mountain 20 miles south of Golden. While 7 of the men waited, the guide, Rudy Gertz, and 2 others skied down to test the slope. Then the avalanche began, and millions of tons of snow began cascading down the mountain. Only the guide and 1 other skier managed to escape. They quickly dug out another man, but the rest were buried under 5 to 20 feet of snow. Rescue helicopters arrived at the site of the slide within 15 minutes. The buried skiers were all carrying radio transmitters and were located quickly, but it took 4 hours to dig them all out. 7 skiers, including the guide's brother, were killed. It's still not known what caused the avalanche. The helicopter had been gone for 10 minutes, and the guide thought the slopes were safe. A team from the National Research Council is on the scene investigating the slide.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The average price of a single detached home in Greater Vancouver is now $2.4 million. The Real Estate Board says conditions in the market are tight because there's a lack of supply, and a lot of people are taking advantage of low interest rates. Mounties in Surrey say it appears the wrong home was targeted in a shooting early Tuesday morning. They don't believe the people inside the home were the intended victims.
This afternoon, I stepped down as leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
After a caucus revolt, Conservative MPs vote to remove Erin O'Toole as their leader. And here in BC, a weekend vote will decide the new leader of the provincial Liberals. We have an insider's view of top contenders Kevin Falcon, Michael Lee, and Ellis Ross. A lot is at stake for the BC Liberals on Saturday. The party looking for its 3rd leader since 2017 and a replacement for Andrew Wilkinson, who stepped down in 2020 after the NDP was re-elected with a majority government. Political commentator Brinder Buller joins me now. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Anita. Good to be here.
How has the campaign been so far? Has it garnered a lot of attention?
Well, it's historically, I think, been the longest campaign in history. And through the campaign, what we've seen is it's almost, I think you could go back to 2017. As soon as Andrew Wilkinson resigned, the campaign actually started. You know, people started gearing up. But through this year-long campaign, we've seen, Anita, we still had a pandemic. We had a federal election. We are still, in British Columbia, dealt with a heat dome, dealt with some cyclones, dealt with mass flooding. We went into a new year and, you know, there's still a lot of issues at play.
Fair enough. And, you know, it seems that Kevin Falcon is gaining a lot of momentum here. So what does that mean for the party, given that so many have said it needs to diversify and pick someone who can help target a younger demographic?
I think the key on the diversity is absolutely important is to look at not what candidates are saying, but who they bring. Number one, I think you need to look at the candidates and the teams, their campaign teams that they've surrounded themselves with. Are their campaign teams diverse? Have they attracted women? Have they attracted the youth? So I think that is a key sign. I mean, candidates and potential politicians can say all they want, but are they proving that by attracting a diverse group of people? I think Kevin's done that, and I think others have done that. And that is a sign of, I believe, how they would run the party, how they would recruit new candidates into the caucus. I mean, look at down south. The Democrats chose Joe Biden. Probably not a popular example right now, what he's going through, but at that time, he was able to rejuvenate the Democrats and come in. And he, credit to him, put together a fairly diverse cabinet, probably the most diverse cabinet that the U.S. has ever seen, and also paved the way for the first ever colored woman to be a vice president. So I think it's about leadership of attracting people and giving the diverse people the space.
Okay, and we're seeing it right now with the Federal Conservative Party, so much division within and very different views on some key issues. With the Liberals also being a sort of big tent party, is there a risk of a split?
Well, I think, and my personal belief is that all parties are big tent and all parties are coalitions, not just the BC Liberals, but all parties will have different factions that you always need to bring together. In British Columbia, I would say the NDP has union support that want to build pipelines. And on the other factor, you have environmental folks who don't want pipelines at all. What it comes down to, Anita, I think, is leadership and vision. When you don't have a leadership and you don't have an identity, then you see the fractions within your coalition. And I think federal example is perfect on Mr. O'Toole. When you flip-flop on positions, then people within the caucus start to differentiate and they go their separate ways. But when you can create an identity, when you can create a strong vision, that attracts people and that keeps people together. And I think that'll be the key for the next leader of the BC Liberals also.
And when you look at those front runners in this race, are you confident that whoever is picked is going to be able to take the party into sort of a new realm?
What they're looking for right now, I think, is a new perspective coupled with some sort of experience. I don't think the party is ready for an experiment. I think they're looking for people who've done grassroots engagement, who can build up the party through grassroots again and bring some experience on the table and a path forward. I don't think the party's ready to experience. And I think whoever the leader is going to have to take on that challenge of renewing the caucus. When you look at it right now, it is not a diverse caucus, and that is going to be a challenge to do that. And how do you continue to attract more younger people, more diverse people, not only as members, but the new leader? How do you set up the party apparatus? How are they going to set up their office? It's going to be key issues that they have to deal with.
Brinder, thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
For most, a rainy day means heading indoors. Why one filmmaker went outside to find human connections and the people he found next. And at 6:42, you're looking at a live shot of downtown Vancouver. After the break, we talk to Johanna and we take a little look-see at the Groundhog predictions and get Johanna's opinion.
With the Olympic mixed doubles beginning here in Beijing on Wednesday, usually the ice is all in and done by now. But after they ran their test event on Monday, Hans Wuthrich, who's the head ice maker here from Canada, Gimli, Manitoba, he was out reflooding the end sheets.
We're going to get it ready tonight and it'll be good.
So you're going to reflood?
Yes, just the outside two sheets.
Sure. Hans is battling the dryness here. The climate in Beijing is dry, the building is dry, so it causes the ice to slowly evaporate. They've brought in more humidifiers to create more moisture.
Okay, so I see all the humidifiers as you try to bring moisture into the air.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That's been our biggest problem. So ever since we kind of finished flooding, it's eaten all our ice up because right now, today, outside today by 2 o'clock, it's going to be minus 20 dew point. Like that's about, you can get in Western Canada, like in Regina, you can get minus 22 point. That's less than 10% humidity. So what's happening is it just wants to suck the ice off. It wants to just, it has nowhere else to grab moisture, so it grabs it off the ice. So what's happening is the outside two sheets, the outside of the two sheets, it wants to suck the ice off.
What are these?
So those are our dehumidification and cooling ducts that were installed to actually dehumidify, not humidify. We haven't been using those other than for cooling the building. So they're cooling the building right now, but they're not dehumidifying. So the dehumidifiers are shut off.
It's complicated, to be sure, and he monitors all of this from up here, his ice station
gives
perch.
Us all the dew points, temperatures, air temperatures. That gives us all the information to go over here to these computers, and then that's where we adjust what we need to adjust. Ice making has never been easy. It's people think it's easy, but it's not. As you know, like if it's not perfect, you know, it's a conclusion of always trying to find something that you can fix.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Beijing.
So there will be 6 more weeks of winter, at least according to a famous groundhog. Punxsutawney Phil emerged from his burrow this morning. Thousands of people gathered at Gobbler's Knob as members of Punxsutawney Phil's inner circle summoned him from his tree stump at dawn to learn if he had seen his shadow. According to folklore, there will be 6 more weeks of winter if Phil sees it, and like I said, he did. So, of course, we have to bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now to talk about this. So, apparently a long winter ahead, but we are technically halfway to spring. What do you have to say about all this?
Yes. Well, first of all, I knew I was going to have to follow the rodent. I knew that's the way it was going to go. Yes. Scientifically speaking, we are about midway between winter and the spring equinox. So it really is only 6 more weeks. And it is a La Nina, so you can probably bet we're going to see more cold and snow. But I've got to tell you, I actually saw a marmot online out of Vancouver Island named Violet. And that one I can get behind because you had to learn about the science of hibernation before you got to see a Violet's call. So usually grumpy Johanna on Groundhog Day found a silver lining. Let me take you through the current temperatures right now. We've got a lot of winter going on across the country right now. No matter which rodent or meteorologist you go by, the Arctic air is in full swing. We've actually got snow accumulating tonight in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. It's approaching Atlantic Canada. And this same system actually stretches all the way back to Texas. This snowstorm crosses 3 time zones, and already 2,000 flights have been canceled south of the border. This is a look at the snow forecast over the next 48 hours. You can see that long but intense strip of snow that extends from Texas all the way through to Newfoundland. That's sort of the 20 to 60 centimeter band. So I'm sure we will be seeing and hearing pictures and stories out of this latest massive snowstorm on the East Coast. We've got our own snow to contend with. Kicking things off tonight and through the overnight, we've got that fresh surge of moisture. So it really won't stop snowing for Prince George, really ramping up tomorrow night up towards Fort St. John. And you can see those 2 bands of snow for the 2 mountain ranges. We'll be seeing some accumulations over 25 centimeters, and look for that snow to our mountain passes across the southern interior as well. But that's pretty much it for the snow for Metro Vancouver. We're still under that special weather statement. We might see that wet snow cause some slick roads tonight, but tomorrow that will be changing over to rain. That's showing up in everyone's forecast, the precip of one kind or another. Kelowna, you'll start the day off with flurries. You might see some sun before the day ends. Cranbrook, seeing some sunshine for you as well, as those flurries taper off in the morning. So a couple rainy days with mild temperatures. Look at those overnight lows, Thursday night and Friday night, back above the seasonal mark. Still looking pretty good for this weekend. I'm happy that hasn't changed. Showers return for early next week, but wow, that's a 9 in there. Anita, I think this is our first forecast that doesn't include sub-zero overnight lows. I feel like you're happy about that.
I'm definitely happy about that. And I think that does mean that we're getting closer to spring. So
I agree. So we're saying the groundhogs are right this time.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Sophia Financial Group of Raymond James Limited. Register now for our free Cash Flow Connection series at sophiaevents.ca.
This week, we are running a 3-part CBC Creator Network series called The Opposite of Isolated. It follows Vancouver filmmaker Julian Baisa as he builds connections in a city made lonelier by the pandemic. In the final installment, Baisa spends a rainy day in the park talking to strangers.
This project started as a reason to get out of the house. I'd go out on walks every week, take photos of strangers, and listen to their stories. But it's become more than that now. I see the world differently when I take photos. Beautiful moments become frozen in time. Strangers become characters. I started coming to this park during the pandemic, but I've since realized you don't really know a place until you get to know the locals.
This is Miller. He's 6. He's pretty blind. He has a cataract in his one eye. If we hadn't had him, I'd probably be in a much worse place because I think he is a big part of why I can feel a sense of purpose even on days when, I don't have a lot going on, and when he's being silly, or just watching him struggle with his vision issues and just not even let it get him down and just keep living the full life is pretty inspiring. You kind of wish you had some of his qualities sometimes of just being so resilient when it comes to facing adversity. I guess just when you're feeling sad or you're feeling a little more hopeless about what things are going on, you kind of just want to fake a smile or something. But it's surprising because when you choose to be more vulnerable, those are your best memories almost, when you just kind of have that moment and you open up to someone, even if it's a stranger or something. So I really don't know what stops me from doing that more even after you have the positive experience. But I guess it's just you feel embarrassed or you feel like you shouldn't be experiencing this problem, so it's easier to pretend you don't have it or something like that.
It's not something in particular that I'm looking for, just people, and the stories that make us who we are.
Her name was Tana. There's very few Tanas in the world. And we were very close, and I was very young. But it didn't work.
Why didn't it work?
I'm too stubborn. I made a mistake. Well, you've heard the stories now. I've had 2 marriages, and I'm still not satisfied. That's the loneliness I'm talking about. In other words, I get anxious sometimes when I realize I'm alone, right? But I also worry about failure as a man. My manhood will be a failure. That's what I worry about. And I question myself, well, how can you judge whether it's a failure or a success? By my sense of personal responsibility. And that was really what was intro to my retirement program, my 5 years of searching for something to do other than my work. All these little funny things that I wished I could do when I was not working, I tried, right? But they didn't satisfy me. Only the work satisfied. Now, the work becomes extremely important to me. Like it's nothing else, except maybe finding a partner that can understand what I'm talking about. And I find also most people don't think about what I talk about. I believe that human beings are commanders of the universe. We're here to make the universe work.
If there's something I've learned, it's that in discovering how different we all are, I've also realized how fundamentally we are all the same.
A golf course isn't the first place you'd expect to run into a seal. How a molting juvenile ended up on the course next.
We're working on the Power of One 2.0, we're calling it, World Classics.
Thousands of years ago, when Inuit were the only people living on the land, the sea was free of creatures. At that time lived a happy young Inuk girl named Sedna, who had everything a child could ever want for.
Last year, when we started with the Power of One, was our pandemic pivot, and it came out of a place of anxiety and stress for me, going, what can we do to employ people and give ourselves a sense of being rooted and grounded in these crazy times.
This series is featuring stories from around the world, stories that have been told for ages and ages, and I knew right away what story I hoped to tell. Sedna is a very strong young Inuk woman who is betrayed by both her husband and her father. But instead of losing her life and her strength, she instead becomes the ruler of the underworld, the goddess of the sea.
We have been having a conversation over the past number of years around how classical has, was quite limited in its scope in North America to a Eurocentric model, and we've been challenged and been challenging ourselves about what this, how relevant is that today and how can we be more inclusive. When you look at our world map on the Perchance website, you're going to see every week another icon got added to the world map, and when you click on it, you go right to that person's bio and video. When you start to see where all these stories are coming from, you go, all these stories span the world, and all these people are living right here with us. And that's just beautiful.
The Power of One World Classics series, I am very excited to see the rest of the stories, actually, because I do know that they come from storytellers from all around the world, and I am excited to learn other perspectives and other histories and parts of other cultures. So I'm really excited to see it myself, and I'm so proud to be part of it.
A juvenile elephant seal in Victoria had some trouble on Monday looking for a spot to molt. The 250-pound pup was found trying to get comfortable in a creek, a baseball diamond, and the Gorge Vale Golf Club. Victoria Animal Control managed to kennel the trespassing seal after an overnight stay at the local dog pound. The marine mammal was sent to safer grounds by officers from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Once a year, elephant seals need to spend about 4 to 6 weeks out of water for their molt. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. Dan is back at 11:30 tonight, not the usual 11. That's after the National. And we are going off air for a couple of days as the Olympics start up on CBC TV. So we won't have a show tomorrow or Friday. Next week, we will be on at 3 p.m. on CBC TV, and that's happening for the rest of the Olympics. And we'll be on online as usual at 6 p.m. We'll leave you with shots from Beijing as they ramp up for the opening ceremony early tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching. Good night.